we start with this excellent session, and where's Hari? Thank you so much, Hari, for making it at short notice. I just called him a week back, and he was quite gracious to accept the invitation. My task is to introduce Ganesh, who will be moderating this session. Ganesh and I go back at least 5 years. He's been an integral part of Business Literature Festival since 2018 in different ways. Thank you, Ganesh, for that. And we will have many more years to work together. And we have few things in common. We enjoy beer together. We enjoy Goa. We discuss about which part of Goa to go next. And more interesting than that is nature treks. He is an avid nature trekker, goes 3 times a year. And I'm quite jealous about him, and I want to follow him. So welcome, Ganesh.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Ben. Whenever I call people on the phone, usually they're taken aback for just a moment. Because later they tell me that, it's like a gush of wind, it's like a booming voice at the other end of the phone saying, hi, so-and-so, hi, whatever. So for the first time in my life, I heard a matching voice and a matching sense of energy on the phone when I called up Hari some time back. So his voice booms out of the phone, hello Ganesh, and then, so we take it off from there. So in terms of energy, I think we struck it off immediately, and it's a pleasure that I'm going to be having a conversation with Hari Tian now. May I invite you on stage, Hari? Please come up. A round of applause, please. You can just walk up. So we're going to feed off each other's energy. I was telling him this morning. Hari has spent 20 years in the startup ecosystem, and he's had a close-up view of different companies at different stages of their growth in the journey to scaling up. He's worn different hats. He wears different hats even today. He's an angel investor. He's a mentor to entrepreneurs, a sounding board, and a benign one, I'd assume, a sounding board to entrepreneurs. He runs the Artha School of Entrepreneurship, which is, I think you've entered a new phase in your career, and we'll talk a little more about that in the conversation. He's seen 5 startups through critical phases of transition during their journey to scale up. All his energy and attention is now taken up by Artha, I said, and he's the author of 7 books, I kid you not. So he's a serial author, apart from all of this. So the latest book of his is From Pony to Unicorn, Scaling a Startup Sustainably. I've read 5 of these, and I'm in the process of reading the 6th one. Hari, I must tell you that your books are a mixture of practical wisdom, straight up from the ground.
Yes.
No nonsense kind of tone, and yet there is heart in them. Yeah, you write in a very human way, So there's nothing putting down other people or, there's nothing like that. So that's wonderful. I completely enjoy your books. Welcome. So we'll get started. So Hari wears, I'm going to talk to Hari about 2 broad parts to this conversation. One is about his startup life, and because he's a rarity in the sense that in India, there aren't many startup founders or investors or mentors who also write prolifically and who write with erudition. So he's that rarity, and I'm going to make use of both those aspects of his life. So I'll start off with, coincidentally, in the last conversation, Manish was talking about this 1-year view to growing a business, the 5-year view and a 25-year view, and how all 3 are completely different, right? So these days, I want to take up in the first question the elephant in the room, or maybe I should say unicorn in the room, which is this hype about becoming a unicorn, right? Scaling up, and it seems from media and from certain sections of the crowd that seems to be the holy grail. But what is your close-up view? What is the real mood in most of the entrepreneurs you've spoken to and interacted and advised? And what do you yourself think about this?
So my personal bias, Ganesh, is that you should build a business in a very sustainable way.
Okay.
But, we see funded environment. I don't think it's fair to expect that everyone will build businesses the way we want them to. So I think there will always be some degree of hype. And there will be businesses that will be built in an unsustainable way without a product market fit. For example, you can have capital-induced product market fits, rapidly growing, trying to get higher valuations, seeking higher valuations. I think that is inevitable in any venture-funded ecosystem. So let's just take examples like, let's say, Tiger Global or even SoftBank. SoftBank has raised a $100 billion fund. Sequoia put together a $2 billion fund for India. So imagine a $100 billion fund. If they have to put $1 million each into sustainable ventures, then they have to be investing in 100,000, which is 1 lakh startups that will be investing it. It's absolutely impossible for them to evaluate 10 million and figure out the 1 lakh startups. So I think they will end up putting $100 million to $1 billion in any investment, right? They won't back these mom and pop startups.
Yes.
They will back up the great ideas which they think can become much big. So in the process, there will always be a lot of hype. There will be, obfuscation. There will be attempts to divert attention. Non-tech businesses will be called tech businesses. For example, WeWork, right?
Everyone wants to latch on tech.
WeWork wasn't a tech business at all, but they said we're a tech company. I don't know, they fooled a lot of people. It was a real estate company masquerading as a tech company. So I think all of this is part of the course when you're building. Ultimately, it is private money. It is not money that belongs to pensioners and widows. So it's up to them to how they want to use it, what kind of businesses they want to build. I think investors who come in subsequently should just be a little careful, that some of these businesses could be really very hollow. So I think care needs to be exercised by subsequent investors. But what investors do with their private money and how they build businesses, I think is up to them.
It's really up to them.
The only problem with this approach, and that problem I think nobody can solve, is that it creates wrong role models.
Yes.
So at the end of it, millions of people in India, the youth, are looking up for role models. And unfortunately, sometimes you find some of these companies with a lot of hype and which are not built on sustainable product market fits become role models. And they're not the kind of role models that we should have, because India needs mass entrepreneurship. India's problems will never be solved by 10 unicorns or 100 unicorns at all. They will be solved by millions of micro entrepreneurs, millions of individuals turning small entrepreneurs, giving 5 to 10 jobs. So I think they end up getting the wrong models, and that's my problem. Otherwise, I think it's their money, what they wish to do, how they build the businesses is their.
So I think this is also a reflection of human behavior and human ambition and how we generally look at things, right?
Yes.
We've always wanted to grow and that overarching ambition.
Yes.
But I think that's been played up to an extreme degree.
So I think, there are 3 components to ambition. One ambition, I would say, that it's important to understand this. I would say one is performance-related ambition, which is all of us, want to set goals for ourselves in the companies that we work for and achieve those goals. That's performance ambition, which is good.
And keep raising the bar
always.
Year after year.
You have growth ambition, which is you want to learn constantly.
Yes.
And the last is the reward ambition. So I think when reward ambition begins to overpower everything else, it could potentially turn very toxic. And you can see, many of the startups that, grew rapidly and even collapsed have been driven a lot by that last component, of which is reward ambition. So I think if you can balance ambition, if founders can really balance ambition, it's important to have ambition, because without ambition, you can't even eradicate malaria, for instance.
You can't eradicate any problem.
You can't do any problems, right? Even social causes, you need ambition. So I think ambition just needs to be balanced between the 3 components. Sometimes when it gets too much overpowering in terms of the third one, that's when it turns toxic.
This blends beautifully with the point that you make, and I can make out that it's it's a theme close to your heart, which is about, as enterprises scale up and become bigger and bigger and bigger, somewhere inside in the internal system and structure, they realize they start decentralizing, they start creating smaller units. So it's ironic that on the one hand, it's a quest for growth and scaling up, but internally, that is unmanageable, right? You can't turn around an elephant and stuff.
Correct.
There is the need to create those smaller units and all.
That's correct.
So how did the 2 of them dance? And secondly, therefore, is there a case at all for a sustainable mid-sized enterprise? I'm using mid-sized.
Very good question. So I think, what my own belief is that as companies become larger, startups become mature, and they become large, they lose the ability to innovate because they lose their ability to be agile. Decision makings become slow, complex organizations. So I think there isn't clearly an optimal size. And therefore, when companies become large, they try to mimic small organizations by creating smaller teams and empowering them. But that always doesn't work. And in fact, private equity firms step in at these points of time when there are diseconomies of scale. So beyond a particular size, they're no longer economies of scale, they are diseconomies of scale.
Yeah, right.
So I think private equities firms figure out where is that point and they step in and break up that company into smaller entities so that they can be run better, value can be unlocked, innovation can continue. And I think larger companies lose the ability to innovate. That's why they get disrupted by, a small startup starting in the dorm at MIT, IIT, NIT, anywhere.
I think it's sheer question of just the size, right? Like you said, you can't really be nimble and agile and innovate. And there are so many things lost in translation or transmission between teams and people. So if you have 40,000 people, then it's really difficult to, communicate that passion from the top to the along the ranks.
Correct.
So my next question, would you care to answer that?
Yes.
Is there a case for more and more entrepreneurs to aim for building, tempering their ambition in a sense, growth ambition, and focusing on things like impact, and whatever the problem they want to solve, but keeping the enterprise at a certain scale range? Is that possible, or
I think this is not in the control of entrepreneurs, what you choose to do. So I think the journey goes along, and I think you just go with the flow, which is that if your startup becomes big, it becomes big, so be it. If it remains small, so be it. So I think ultimately it depends upon the fundamental ambition and objective of every entrepreneur. You cannot tell an entrepreneur, you should do this. If that entrepreneur is interested in creating impact, if impact is the primary driver motive for this person setting up a business, then that person will focus on creating impact. But if somebody else is driven by something else, then the kind of business they will build will be different. So I don't think it's fair or even right to tell anyone what to do. It's up to them, their personality, what they really want to do.
That's true. And if one is focused on impact, then one keeps that in the forefront and focus. And things really fall around, around that goal, even as they grow. Right?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Reality hurts only when you fight it. And you said that, it makes you strong if you just embrace it, if you just accept that. Are there cases that you would like to talk about in the context of the pandemic that you just emerged from, where this has worked for or against, or it could be any other crisis, it need not be the pandemic, but could you cite an example to tell us how an entrepreneur embraced reality or fought reality with consequences? It need not be a specific example, it can be a general take on what you see.
So I think, I don't know if I can talk of specific examples where pandemic hurt any specific.
Or it could be any other crisis.
Yeah, but I think the pandemic was a headwind for a set of companies and it was tailwind for many other companies as well. Tailwind, for example, companies like Big Basket. For example, clearly people suddenly began shopping online. Whatever Big Basket thought can be accomplished in 3 years, we got it in 3 months. 3 months, right? Yeah. And then I think several small organizations, several small, setups actually died, which depended upon physical interaction. So restaurant businesses, travel businesses, hospitality businesses, airlines, I think they suffered. So if you look at companies like Make My Trip, I think they were deeply, deeply hurt. But then they embraced the reality that, for the next couple of years, and that couple of years could have been 10 years. We don't know it just ended maybe after 2 years. But they did embrace that, they accepted reality and figured out how to restructure, reconfigure themselves to be able to deal with it.
So when a crisis like this hits, and you've written a wonderful book on, how to emerge from a crisis or how to turn that around to your advantage. When something like this happens, it's a googly, right? It's an oddball. It's thrown in, it's a curveball.
Yes.
Are there a couple of, while I know there's no formula, is there anything, more sensible kind of approach that an entrepreneur can take to tide this over?
Yes, so I think, I call this resilience.
Yes.
In fact, resilience is a concept that it's like empowerment, right? You either understand it properly or you don't understand it and use it as a buzzword. So I think resilience means a certain set of things to my mind. To my mind, resilience means, for example, character is one component of resilience. Those who have character are able to tide over adversity better than those who don't. And what is character? Character, I think, is the difference between knowing and doing. So a lot of smart people, intelligent people know what is right and what is wrong. But people with character are able to do the right things, because doing the right things often is extremely difficult. It needs character to be able to do that. Most decisions that you take, which are really, really difficult, what is right to do. Say, for example, you're running a company and you have a sales head who's bringing in all the money, who's bringing in a lot of revenue, and the guy is involved in a sexual harassment case. Now, what call do you take? Do you actually fire the guy, which is a difficult call, or do you underplay that and soft pedal that issue? So I think that calls for character, being able to fire that guy, knowing the consequences that your business will get set back. So I think resilience is in character. One component of resilience is character. The second component of resilience, I think, is about uncluttered thinking, because if you can think in an uncluttered way, You're able to figure out what approximations to make, what matters, what is really important, what is priority, what is not priority. You're able to simplify your life very significantly. So being able to think in an uncluttered way, I think is important. Another component of resilience, which is able to deal with adversity, I think is all of us need to bring a blend of masculine and feminine leadership styles.
Energies.
Which I think masculine energy and doesn't really mean men and women, but characters associated with them historically.
I feel all of them have a blend.
That's correct.
To different degrees.
Absolutely. For example, masculine style is about ambition, it's about achievement orientation, it's about aggression. Whereas feminine styles are typically about, embracing collaboration,
Empathy and flow
all of that. So I think a combination of the two is very essential for dealing with adversity. If you're extreme in one case, either case, you find it difficult to get over adversity. I think a combination of that. So I think there is a formula. You can actually come up with a clear formula on how to develop resilience, how to build adversity. And while some of these characters that I talked about, are in some ways inborn, but I think with practice and self-awareness and knowledge,
these can be nurtured.
Inculcated and nurtured.
So that brings me to what you just expanded on one other critical point, which I loved from one of your books, which is that all these characters, therefore, see, you can't build all of them on the spur of the moment, right?
Correct.
You can't say, hey, crisis is coming, let me build character.
Yes.
You can't do that.
Correct.
So then it takes that view, that self-awareness right from the beginning. And therefore you need a path for all this to happen.
That's correct.
That's extremely critical. You can't just build it in a day.
Yes.
Okay. Now that we've put some distance between COVID and us, just two big takeouts on how we've emerged collectively, the startup ecosystem. How have we emerged from this and where do we stand now? Now that this is about 6 months to 8 months behind.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about a couple of big takeaways for you from this?
See, for me, I think COVID created some short-term trends. They created some long-term trends as well. Those who identified the short-term trends and thought that they were long-term trends are to some extent suffering. You can see that already today. So they went overboard in assuming that these short-term trends are going to last forever.
Right.
So work from home will last forever. Schools will be shut forever. Businesses will be, everything will move online. Everything will move online.
Right.
So I think they went overboard and built things for the short term, which actually, for the long, assuming that this will be a long-term trend, which it is obviously not. So I think these businesses did tend to suffer. So I think that is for me one big takeaway. And in terms of other things, I think the pandemic accelerated a few trends. One trend that it accelerated clearly to me is that people have begun to migrate online very quickly. So people who never thought of shopping online have begun shopping online. The third big one is nothing to do with startups. I think a lot of people, began to realize very clearly that there is more to life than, doing an underpaid and unfulfilling job. They figured out that you can do gigs on the side, which are fulfilling. They figured out that you can do very interesting things on the side. The passions they can work on.
Right.
So I think staying away from that punishing commute and within the four walls of their home, they discovered
a new world.
Yeah, a new world in itself. I think to me that is the biggest. That means people have discovered
more of themselves and more dimensions.
That's correct. Yeah.
Right. That's extremely heartening. Yes. Another interesting takeaway from some of your books is that, and this is something I've been practicing to the extent possible. I think it's a never-ending journey, which is that as enterprises scale up, the media and all the conversation, the general discourse focuses on scaling up of the enterprise. But what about the scaling up of the founder? Right? That's an extremely interesting point you make in your books. So can you expand a little bit about that?
Yes. So I think, no startup can scale without the founder herself being able to scale. Because ultimately it's the founder behind the business. So I think founders need to be able to scale as fast as the startups in terms of multiple things. For example, startups go through multiple organizational transitions and individuals go through multiple leadership transitions. So founders need to be able to make these leadership transitions seamlessly. And if they know what these leadership transitions are and how they should go about making them, it's that much easier for them to make. So I think, founders in the beginning are able to hustle, use first principles thinking, avoid bureaucracy and get things done fast. But that's not going to take them to the next phase because they need to begin to understand organization culture. They need to understand how to prioritize. They need to be able to understand how to hire and inspire people smarter than them.
Right.
They need to be a magnet for talent. They need to develop resilience. So all these are skills and talents which they need to develop along the way. For example, they need to move from working hard to working smart.
Correct.
They need to develop a balanced leadership style. They need to be able to work with people who are not like themselves.
That's true.
Because in the beginning, you love working with people who are like yourself. And you can move fast.
But too much of conformity and homogeneity is bad.
Exactly. But at some point of time, you need to like working with people who are different from you, diverse backgrounds. So these are transitions that founders need to make. Unless they can make these transitions, they will not be able to scale the startup well. And I would say, it's like a kid learning, LCM, HCF in grade 5 and moving to calculus by grade 7. All of us learn calculus by grade 12.
Yes.
But then when a startup begins to scale, you need to be able to learn calculus by grade 7. So for me, a founder scaling is in terms of, learning calculus by grade 7.
Right. So
Like
crunching the learning curve and
crunching the
really-
learning curve completely. That's correct.
But how many entrepreneurs really, and I'm speaking mostly about India, manage to do that? And what are some of the methods and mindsets that you think have worked in an entrepreneur scaling themselves up? It's not easy. There are a lot of life skills involved.
Yes.
There are dimensions that you cannot just overnight throw yourself into.
Yes.
Right? So I would be technically sound and I know my product or my whatever.
Correct.
So how does this happen? What works on ground?
See, I think if you look around, you'll find that some entrepreneurs have been able to scale in a very mature way. Some entrepreneurs may not have been able to scale, but still are running their businesses reasonably successfully.
Right.
But they're always fragile. At some point of time, they can always break. I think one key element for being able to scale in a very mature way is not to be carried away by success a lot. Because if you believe that you have played a very big role in your success, then you have a serious problem. Because luck also has played a very big element.
Absolutely.
Timing is the most important element. The moment you begin to realize that externalities have played an important role in your success, I think that's when you tend to become a little humbling, and then you gradually move towards being a level 5 leader. I'll give you an example. Sudhakar, V.S. Sudhakar. How many of you in this room have heard of V.S. Sudhakar, right? Nobody, but he's the heart and soul of Big Basket. He's never been in the media. Nobody even has heard of him. He has never made a statement. He's never spoken, but he's so focused on building the business. That's how level 5 leaders are. But you also find, other leaders who have built unicorns are always there in the media talking about themselves.
They talk first and build later.
Their fame is more important for them. So I think for me, even though some of these businesses appear successful, in the long run, to me, they're always fragile.
Yeah.
They always run the risk of breaking up. They always run the risk of governance issues suddenly showing up and surprising investors. So I think being a little low-key, not getting carried away by success, which means not getting demotivated by failure also, I think is very important.
So maintaining equanimity.
Equanimity, I think, is very
And the
important.
focus.
And the focus.
On first principles,
Being
like
a
you said
hedgehog,
earlier.
absolutely. Doing what you do really well, staying focused on that.
Right. And linked to that is also the thing that you need to delegate. You need to bring in people with diverse skills and backgrounds.
Yes,
Feel
absolutely.
comfortable and let go of your insecurity, right? About working with them.
Truly secure leaders, are those who can hire people smarter than them.
And get the work done.
Get the work, absolutely. Yes.
Right, okay. Yes. When and how did Hari, the corporate honcho, investor, mentor to entrepreneurs, turn writer?
So,
As in writer of books,
Writer
especially.
yeah. So I have been a first principles thinker all my life, and I have been a reasonably good student. But as Manish said, I was never bothered about exams. I was more interested in learning and all of that. And, in a corporate life, you don't get to really write a lot. But I was a person who always paid a lot of attention to spotting patterns and spotting trends. That was something that was, natural to me, or innate in me. So at some point of time, 7 years back, I just felt I've been in the startup ecosystem for 13 years. At that point, it was 13 years. And I felt that there are many young founders who are solving problems that have been solved already in the past. They're struggling with many of those. And I felt 80% of the problems they're solving have already been solved for. So I thought, why not share some of these learnings? So I began writing on an open platform, which is LinkedIn. And I found that, my writings resonated with people because they were very real.
Right.
And they were not textbookish kind of points. They were based out of real life experiences.
From the trenches.
Trenches, exactly. So as a result, I found a lot of positive response, and I thought, why not begin to write a book? And that's how, the first book came out, which is Cut the Crap and Jargon, Lessons from the Startup Trenches. And then one book after the other became a pattern for me.
So you do like to express your thoughts, I can see that.
Absolutely.
And you do that fairly frequently and freely.
Freely, absolutely.
Right?
And I speak my mind.
You speak your mind.
Speaking my mind as well.
Yes. And I've seen that you also get into the flow of the feedback. There's an energy flow and a feedback loop in the conversations. And how does that help you? How does that help you in writing a book also?
Yes,
or writing books?
Yeah, writing books has helped me, but I'm not a very avid reader. I think in the last panel, Raghu and Manish were talking about reading books, and I think Raghu mentioned that there's no difference between someone who hasn't read and someone who's illiterate. I have a slightly different take on that, which is there's no difference between someone who reads a lot and does nothing, and someone who doesn't read and do nothing. So I believe a lot more in action, and I think.
But you have someone who doesn't read much but does a lot.
Yeah, I write a lot because it's a lot of I look for patterns, And my consumption of
Information.
is more information is by talking to people, listening to people, observing things around me.
Right.
And sometimes these days visual content, YouTubes. But my reading is very limited. It's not very high. I'm not very voracious reader, but by most standards, I'm probably average, I would rate myself as.
So the next logical question is, which are some of the books that you've loved, that you really, really liked a lot?
Yeah.
What would you like for us to also pick up and try?
Yeah. So I love stories, but real life stories inspire me a lot. So I'm not passionate about reading business books, though I write business books myself. So I've read, for example, 0 to 1, Reid Hoffman's, Masters of Scale I've been reading, but I find a lot of, leadership lessons from people who have not done anything in management. So for example, Shackleton's Way. I found amazing lessons in leadership, different styles of leadership. For example, Shackleton's leadership style was very different from Edmund Hillary's, from, Robert, Scott's leadership. All of them were very different. But for me, for example, Shackleton's Way was a very interesting book. A Team of Rivals, for example, the story of Lincoln bringing in all of the people who lost the presidency with him, bringing them on, just like Barack Obama brought in Hillary Clinton, for instance. So that book, for example, was very inspiring. Mount Everest, assault on Mount Everest, and the story of Mount Everest itself, for me, was very inspiring. So I find a lot of leadership lessons from books which don't purport to be books.
Business books on leadership.
Explicit books on leadership, for me, I find them very, very, I just can't stand them. So I like books which don't explicitly claim to be books on leadership. I think really,
But still unravel the deeper shades of life.
Correct, absolutely.
Okay. And what about fiction, and what is your comfort reading?
My comfort reading since
What do you go back to when you want to really pick up a book and forget the
For
world?
example, for my daughter, it used to be Roald Dahl and, Happy Prince.
As in, we used to read to her.
Yeah, I used to read to her. Now, for example, To Kill a Mockingbird, I can read it n number of times. Whenever I'm stressed, whenever I'm feeling a little unhappy, I can read To Kill a Mockingbird, and I can read a few of Oscar Wilde's books, and they give me a solace and comfort.
I love Oscar Wilde's books too. Lovely. The other ones I love are Agatha Christie.
I see.
Anytime, So
Holmes, for example, Sherlock Holmes, Conan
Sherlock
Doyle,
Holmes. Yes.
I've read each of them a number of times.
Okay, note to the audience who are here or who are watching online, please do send in your questions. You can send in your questions online through comments. Just type in your comments and they'll land up here and we'll pick up your questions. But we'll just take a break from the conversation and take a couple of questions from the audience here. Could you please hand over the mic, please? Someone needs to go there. Jay has a question.
Hi, Hari. What's your take on moonlighting?
I have written extensively about moonlighting. I've written in Money Control, Mint Category Central Page. The thought on moonlighting is that it's the way forward, which is that the more you try to fight it, the worse it is. I think you should embrace it and move on. Because those who are opposing moonlight, I think expecting underpaid workers to work unlimited hours is patently unfair. I think the idea of moonlighting came in an era when employers bought 8 hours or 9 hours of their employees' time and nothing else. But today, that has changed. They pay them the same, but expect them to be available over weekends and for unlimited hours. To me, that's completely unfair. I think people should be allowed to do side gigs, paid or unpaid. You don't even need to take permission from employers as long as you're not working for a competitor or disclosing confidential information. I think moonlighting is the way forward. That's the way it is.
So I have a tangential question, because sometime back we said, one needs to get into the flow of growth and scaling up, and one really can't control a lot of variables, right? So there is corporate management. You need work to be done. Your aspirations are galloping. There are lots of things impinging on you, a lot of problems, challenges in the market. And you have your workforce, your team, right? So if you let people moonlight, so my question is, how does an organization draw? Where should they draw boundaries? And those boundaries need to come from them, right? Rather than being enforced by market challenges or by forces like moonlighting. Can management take that decision in a balanced way, balanced for the team, balanced for themselves?
Yeah, see, I think you should give people work that is fulfilling. If people don't find work fulfilling, you can't expect them not to go out and do interesting things which excite them. And I think the pandemic made people realize that some of them are stuck in boring jobs, and there are side gigs that can be extremely interesting. I think employers should hold employees accountable for outcomes and not for the amount of time they spend on the job. If they want to hold them accountable for time spent on the job, it should be 9 hours and nothing more. Otherwise, hold people accountable for outcomes. If you find somebody not delivering outcomes because they are, working all night on something else and not able to concentrate, then hold them accountable for outcomes. Fire them if they're not delivering stuff to you.
Right.
So I think the effort should be focused on outcomes.
Again, first principles.
The problem with many of these services companies is that they are selling employee time to their clients. They're billing 8 hours or 9 hours to their clients. And therefore, they expect them to be there for 8 or 9 hours. That's fair as long as they're expecting them to be 8 or 9 hours. But expecting them to be beyond that, I think is completely unfair. Completely unfair.
Yes. Another question. Yes.
Yeah, my question is not necessarily in the context of Big Basket, but how do you really manage the tension between, let's say, seasoned outsiders as in HR, culture building leaders like you, and the founders who need not be very receptive, because they are driven by capital-induced growth, as you said. So how do you see people managing this tension?
Yeah. So I think there are two questions that are embedded in what you asked. One is, of course, how do you hire and integrate lateral hires who have independent points of view? And for example, other thing you talked about, capital-induced, product market fit and growth. I'll take the two separately. Somewhere they come together, I think. So there are several organizations you can clearly see, their growth, their customer experience, all of that is capital-induced. I'll take names here. For example, if you take a company like Zepto, right? They can deliver amazing customer experience because they're giving stuff to you in 10 minutes through great execution. They can do that. Now, product market fit to me is a combination of multiple things. It's about growth, it's about customer retention, and it's about profitability eventually. If all the three elements are not met, then you've not really achieved a product market fit. It is capital-induced product market fit, which is you can give discounts, you can run into losses and deliver experience which is not going to last for very long. You can deliver profitability, but if you don't deliver, experience, customer experience, then also we're not a PMF. So I think you need everything here. Now the question is about lateral hires. So I don't think all founders, want to get growth at all costs. There are sensible founders who believe that, there will be good times and there will be bad times, and the cycles will always be there. Cycles of hype and cycles of, pessimism. So smart and mature founders who have ridden these cycles multiple times never get carried away during the up cycle and never get too disappointed during the down cycle. So some founders clearly want to build, I would say, sustainable businesses, and the Big Basket founders are some of them. Besides that, there are many others. To me, for example, an InMobi, if you take a company like InMobi, a company like Book My Show, even Swiggy, I think they are businesses known in the ecosystem for being the hedgehog, which is doing things that they're really good at doing without getting distracted, without believing that capital can accomplish anything. For example, during the demonetization in 2016, Paytm suddenly thought, they can do anything. And they put out the Prime Minister's ads along with the Prime Minister's pictures. And they raised money from SoftBank and they tried to build an Amazon and Flipkart, which is Paytm Mall. They lost thousands of crores in the process because of this digression and distraction.
And they've exited some of their
businesses.
businesses.
PhonePe and Google Pay built out payments businesses, which was their core. They lost sight of the fact that their core business is payments, and they could not do anything. So I think there are companies which stay focused, build businesses in a sustainable way, and there are some companies which get carried away by hubris and by the belief that capital can accomplish anything. I think there are different types of beliefs and businesses.
Meena has a question. Can you just come forward? Meena, you have a question. Yes.
Hi, thanks for all of that. My concern is when you talk to a young person today, 13, 14, what do you want to be? I want to start a company. I want to become a unicorn. I want to sell it, and I want to make lots of money. It's not about what you want to do. They have no clue. So I think this whole entrepreneurship thing is so hyped up by media today that young people see that as the only, channel to make good or to achieve something.
Correct.
That worries me a lot.
Worries me also.
I'll just add
It worries
to
me.
that.
I'll talk about that.
I'll just add to the question. It's as if you just enter entrepreneurship and you're a billionaire next.
Exactly. Yes.
The 99 other stories, or maybe 999 other stories of failures are never played out for realism.
As if they don't
for a
matter.
reality check.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you. This is the survival bias, I think. And that's the point I made right at the beginning, which is we have wrong role models. Media has played a big role in creating these wrong role models, because this is not going to work. Millions of Indians can never, set up these big companies. I'll just give you some data on this. So let's assume that India is a $3 trillion economy roughly. We are growing at 6%, which means $180 billion is what we add every year. And in India, 50% of GDP is wages. So $180 billion, 50% is $90 billion. And there are 17 million youth entering employable age every year. If you divide 90 billion by 17 million, roughly you get 25,000 rupees is the average wage per month. But the fact that 10% of the people corner 50% of the wages really mean that most youth in India will have sub 10,000 rupee jobs. That's a reality.
Jobs.
The sooner we recognize this, the better it is. So there will be millions of people who will be micro entrepreneurs, and we should encourage them to set up small businesses, 3 people businesses, 10 people businesses, because even if you look at these unicorns, how many of them you think are really going to survive? For example, at Paytm, Zomato, you saw their share prices collapse because they didn't deserve those kind of valuations. Many of them you're seeing valuations come off because of the pandemic, going away, the businesses which were built. So many of them are not sustainable and are never going to give you employment. Forget these startups. Even the large ones, Vedanta, for example, Foxconn, setting up a huge 150,000 crore project. The cost it takes to create one job is about 6 crores. So you can't get more than 40, 50,000 jobs. So the only way is micro entrepreneurship. I think we should have a cabinet minister for small, medium enterprises in every state, empower that minister, create role models, recognize small enterprises who are creating jobs. And that's the only way forward for India. These big unicorns, big companies are not going to take us anywhere.
Lovely, heartfelt, and I completely agree with you. So tell us about Artha now. I can sense that that's going to be your big part of your life, or possibly all your life, for the next decade at least. Tell us what the intent is, the what, the why, and the how.
So ultimately, some of us have come together to start a school for entrepreneurship. We've called it the Artha School for Entrepreneurship. The purpose is to solve for the problem of scaling. So here is the thing, there is a difference between our capabilities and our aspiration. Our capabilities is that 6 of us, we have been working for startups which have scaled, VC-funded startups, but our aspiration deep in our hearts is to help these micro entrepreneurs and help all kinds of entrepreneurs, including social ventures. We believe there are lots of lessons to be taken from the for-profit side into the non-profit side. And there are lessons like, for example, because they face the same problems of scaling, stakeholder management, efficiencies, understanding customers, creating impact, they have the same issues. So a lot of lessons to be learned. So we also want to create impact by helping these social entrepreneurs learn how to scale. We want to help micro, small, medium enterprises, the art of scaling. So this is a school where the dream is big. We also want to create, schools of entrepreneurship under the Artha name, which offer a postgraduate degree in entrepreneurship, where we don't charge 40 lakhs, like, for example, the ISB charges, because once you charge 40 lakhs for fees, then you will aspire for jobs which are 1 crore.
Don't come out with wrong intent.
And very few companies in India can offer 1 crore salary. So we want to create, affordable programs which teach relevant stuff taught by practitioners rather than by academicians, so that these people can hit the ground running and join smaller startups.
I think if you keep 40 lakh stuff as your benchmark, they were just going to go after a plush corporate job.
Yes, absolutely.
They're not even going to take up something that's going to solve a problem.
A couple of days back, talking to these, ISB students, many of them, expressed a lot of interest in entrepreneurship, but gradually as they began speaking, I realized that all of them wanted well-paying corporate jobs. So I think it's cool to talk about entrepreneurship. It's a very difficult journey. Very few people actually take it up. It's just cool to talk about.
But this is a fantastic platform for you, self-created platform, to make that the whole theme of micro enterprises, which are sustainable, come true. Right. At least to some degree, right?
Yes, yes.
And you're working closely with governments and policy.
Yes, absolutely. So that's very critical. If you want to create impact on scale in India, or for that matter, anywhere else in the world, you cannot avoid working with the government. You might have all your complaints against the government, they're bureaucratic, they don't do this, but I think to create impact on scale, to get that kind of reach, you have to be able to work with the governments, and our intention is to work with them.
Okay, we'll take one more question from the audience, and then I have one very interesting question, my pet question of Hari to ask. So we'll close with that. Yes, the lady there has a question.
Thank you. My question is, what is your opinion on the role of startups today to shift from business as usual to sustainable business models? By sustainable here, I mean consider the planet along with people and profit.
Yes. So I think, I think there are lots of small businesses being set up. So I just had been to Trivandrum recently for that youth, Mela, where they had come up with some interesting ideas. It was such a heartening thing to see, young students, one was in 12th grade, one had just finished college. They were all setting up small businesses. Many of them were very sustainable, I would say. And if you ask me, many of these small businesses have to be sustainable. I was also talking to, Suresh Gundappa of GAME, Ravi Venkatesh and Suresh Gundappa run this thing called the Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship. And the way they are solving problems is precisely this, which is they have to be sustainable. And the way they do it is that they go to local communities to source problems. They ask them, what are the 10 problems that you guys are facing in your communities? And they find young people who can figure out answers to them. They hold some kind of a competition and get people to find answers to that. And then they also find a stakeholder and sponsor to be able to support this idea and this entrepreneur so that it becomes a success. So I think you need new ways of entrepreneurship to be able to build sustainable businesses where you involve the communities, involve stakeholders who benefit from the communities to sponsor these kind of enterprises. So while, the Unacademies and, Byju's hog all the limelight for all the wrong reasons, I think it is these stories that, we need to be talking about and, they should be our role models. Again, I keep saying this.
Great. So we'll wrap up with this last question. You've written co-authored books with, 7 books with other people, and that's a lot of co-authoring.
Yes.
So your styles may be different, right? So how did you manage to blend your style with that of the writing style, expression style, with that of your co-authors? And also backgrounds differ, right? I know there could be some common ground that you would have found. That's possibly why you even decided to co-author. But how did you blend styles of, different styles of personalities, expression styles, etc.?
It's like working with a co-founder. You can have 2 co-founders, 3 co-founders building a business, and all 3 of you are going to be different. And you should be different, right? If you're identical, there's no need to have a co-founder. So I think you should be different. You should bring complementary skills. And I think there should be mutual respect. The reason why 2 good co-founders work, despite being different, is there is alignment at a very foundational, fundamental level. And therefore, you can appreciate, accept, and even celebrate the differences at a superficial level,
right,
because there is foundational alignment. And the same thing is true for authors as well. When you co-author a book, there should be alignment at a fundamental level. And you know what? I like people with different sets of ideas, somebody who can question me, allow me to question them. And I think ultimately writing a book is a bit of a lonely journey, like building a business is a lonely journey.
Yes.
And I don't want to be lonely. I want company. And I want good company.
Meaningful company.
Yeah, meaningful company. In fact, the entire purpose of my life, at least going forward, is to work with people I like and do things that I love.
Hopefully you'll work with me sometime.
Yes.
So what was the writing process? Nuts and bolts. How did it come down? So did you take up separate chapters or did you combine your ideas and create a chapter? So who actually wrote it?
Yeah. So every book has been different, for example. So I think for me, certainly writing has been about putting out everything that's already in the head. Over months, some ideas begin to take shape. And they're just waiting to come out. For me, it's just that. Ideas from the head just coming out. And then I do, of course, some very elementary research to gather some data to substantiate that. It's not that I look at data to write a story. I have a story in my mind. I just look at data to substantiate that. Now, coming back to specific nuts and bolts chapters, I think every book has been different. There's a new book coming up called Rising Middle India, which I wrote with Bala. So Bala and I write, our writing styles are very similar. The way we think is also very similar. So he wrote a few chapters that he was passionate about. I wrote a few chapters that I was passionate about, and it came well together. Diversity Beyond Tokenism is a book I co-authored with Swati Jaina. That's a book, I wrote from first principles. In fact, diversity, I will be in, working in the entrepreneurial space. So diversity was new territory and ground for me, but I understood it from first principles, and I found that everything that was done by companies was terrible. It was a sham. So I had some thoughts. So she had some thoughts as well. Both of us were aligned. Our writing styles were similar, so we wrote different chapters. But there were some cases where I co-authored with some particular author, where I did, for example, bulk of the writing because that person may not have been able to write as well, think reasonably well. So it's, I think, case to case, depending on book to book.
Lovely, superb. I could go on all day and hijack this entire festival, but that's not the point. I can't do that. We'll talk offline. Thank you so much for this heartening, enriching chat.
Thanks a lot.
I hope you all enjoyed this. Thank you, Hari. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much.